This year, the Commonwealth Bank is proud to partner with the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia to bring you this series of insightful podcasts. Each month, regulators, advocates and Corporate Australia and COSBOA's Industry Association members hold roundtables to work together to fight for small businesses. Get the inside story on what's happening to protect and promote small business in Australia as it happens. Welcome everybody for the second in our series of COSBOA Roundtable Communique podcasts, proudly brought to you by the Commonwealth Bank. It's an opportunity to see into the inner workings of the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, which, as you know, is the peak body for small business advocacy. Each month in an open forum roundtable, we bring together our members, the professional associations, which collectively represent over 800,000 small businesses, plus key stakeholders like the ATO, Treasury, heads of government and regulatory bodies, all there to discuss what's happening in the small business ecosystem right now. In these podcasts, we'll chat you through what is being discussed by our members, presented to us by the government departments and partners, and how we at COSBOA are advocating for small businesses out there. And today we welcome Matthew Addison, our board chair and also the head of the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers. Once again, it's great to chat to you. This was a really interesting roundtable and with lots of hot topics that we discussed, right, Matthew?
Alexi and others, greetings. And yes, it was a good roundtable, some meaty topics that could have got really in depth and really detailed and really quite controversial. But what I was really pleased with this roundtable was our member associations coming to a discussion to openly hear and then contribute with a business response to what's happening to us. We all know our environment right now is a little shaky. It's a little unpredictable. We actually don't know quite what 2 weeks' time looks like. And we've got some real issues on the table that we were able to discuss.
And lots of those things were really pertinent right now. And, you know, the feeling for small business at the moment is real confusion. There's a lack of clarity about what the next 6 months look like. And I would hesitate to say, and I think that this is what we heard from our members, is that there's a lot of fear about and a lot of unknown about what the reopening looks like. You know, conversations with our customers and with our staff. How does that even work? Do we restock? And only to find ourselves shut down in 2 weeks' time because somebody walked through our door who was a COVID case, which is increasingly likely to happen. I mean, it's a real minefield at the moment for small business. And I think as the CEO, I'm finding that we're not getting a lot of answers from government. And that's probably where all these conversations are coming from. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. But I do think government's listening. And I've heard you, Alexi, both in media and in meetings, but we also at the roundtable, and the members backed it up. Exactly what you're calling for. Small business is looking for certainty. What is our environment? I mean, in Victoria, we went through we were out of lockdown and then very quickly we went back into lockdown. And that has really shaken a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. So if we can look at some certainty, and again, this roundtable confirmed COSBOA's call for a roadmap out. What does that roadmap look like? Be it vaccinations, be it restrictions, be it lockdowns, be it public health orders, how are they going to be framed up so a business person can open the doors, not be put in a risk position and not be put in a financial loss position either, because something happens to them that means their door's got to close.
So let's talk about the starting point of our discussions, which was all around that vaccination debate. COSBOA has provided their members somewhat of a framework, a policy that was put together by the great team we have as part of one of our expert panels, which was all about industrial relations. They came together and really unpacked this a little bit and provided a bit of a framework, but it doesn't necessarily answer all those questions, talking to what you were saying about finding themselves at risk, particularly in legal liability land. So let's look at what we were discussing. So we were discussing, first of all, you know, what does it look like for small businesses when they're having these conversations? The first poll question we asked was, are your members concerned that they and their staff might have to check the vaccination status of people entering the business? Now, this was an interesting one because 71% people said yes, their businesses that they look after are concerned, and 29% said no. So it's quite high, but I actually was expecting it to be a bit higher because of all the stuff that's going on in the media. What were your thoughts on that one, Matthew?
Yeah, look, I'm surprised it was a 71-29% split. When we talk to those at real retail, face-to-face retail, where we talk to those organisations and their members that have the younger staff, they're really quite worried about putting some of their staff in a potentially vulnerable or risky position. So that checking process to check that a customer is vaccinated. You've talked about checking their staff must be vaccinated, and maybe that's why it was 29% said no, it's not an issue, because their environment already allows them to ask for the health status. If you're in the health industry, the awards and such things may already permit that. Some awards, some industrial agreements, etc., don't allow you to get into that privacy spot. So I think that's why we had some going, yes, it's an issue, but some industry saying, no, it's not an issue.
I wanted to jump to the one about we were asking our members, do you believe mandating for vaccination status should be determined by industry sector? Now, this was an even split between yes, no, and in some instances. And because this is one of the things that has been discussed in government forums, do we make it that, anybody who is a baker has to, mandate vaccinations? Anybody who is an accountant now has to mandate vaccinations. And maybe that's why there was an even split. It was quite interesting that there wasn't really a determination from that poll at all. Why do you think that was?
Look, I think you've called it out, Alexi. As you said, it was an even split. 1/3 said yes, 1/3 said no, and 1/3 said sometimes. Why that? Again, I think because in some industries, having vaccines mandated is really quite, how do I not express the opinion here, but there's some logic to it. They're a high-risk environment. It's high exposure. It's high consequence if somebody was to suffer COVID. So therefore, I think that's why we get in some cases, it's a definite yes. In some cases where it's low risk or low consequence, I think that's why we get no, don't do it by industry. The other thing I've got, Alexi, and you and I have sat in some meetings, soon as we do yes for that one and no for that one and yes for that one and no for that one, we get complexity. It's no longer a simple system. It's no longer a system that everybody can understand. So we end up with long lists of who does and who doesn't, who can and who can't. And that brought us to that next question of who should be responsible. So who has to take the responsibility on for mandating? Is it the individual? Well, that's not a mandate, that's really a self-choice. Is it a business? Well, IR might cause some concerns there, but what the roundtable came back with was not a surprise to me. Alexi, interested in your comment, but responsibility for mandate, 88% said this has to sit with government.
Yeah, and what was really good to see was that is what COSBOA and in other industry groups as well are really calling for, was that tying the mandating of vaccines to a public health order, give us the pathway and the restrictions or some framework to work within. This, for me, the answer to this question really screamed about why we are seeking clarity, and this is an easy one that the government can lay down and in some cases already has when we look at aged care workers. Tell us what we need to do and we'll do it in this regard. You're not here to make us, change our business model drastically, but when it comes to mandating vaccine statuses, if the government can give us some leeway and link it to public health orders, that may solve the problem of this confusion for a lot of businesses.
Again, the uncertainty. Does that public health order, the way it's written, actually apply to me? And if I'm an employer, does it give me a legal basis for what's that fair work term, lawful and reasonable request of my staff to get vaccinated? Well, if we've got a public health order that makes it lawful, then we move into very safe territory for small businesses in Australia. If we have a vaguely worded or a generic public health order, the business owner is left back in IR confusion.
Exactly. And this is the thing when we discuss, I guess, try and explain it to those who have never run a small business, perhaps a bureaucrat or someone in the media, for instance, and explain to them that we are straddling so many different types of legislation, both at the federal and the state level, that we're supposed to unpack in a way that is linked with health, a discussion that we've never had to have with our customers or our workers before. This is why having some clarity in a way of doing business that we've never set foot in before, that's where the help is, I think, with having it linked to the public health orders. So it was good to see that our members are on board with that approach that we've been taking in the advocacy space. Now let's move on to the fun topic of least cost routing, which it feels like an immersive experience, doesn't it, Matthew? Whenever we talk about this, it's complex, but it was really great to have Mark come and give us a quick update. So if you just want to summarise where we're at, what's happened lately, and then give everyone a bit of a summary where we are with least cost routing.
It's hard to do this topic justice without spending about 15 minutes at least getting the summary. But what we as COSBOA are aware of, what the members are now tapping into, is we've got Reserve Bank making decisions and announcements. We've got the ACCC making determinations around parts of what's going on in the payments platforms. We've got the Farrell Review, and we've got all these parallel universes all dealing with, in effect, how Australia pays each other. And what's the cost of paying? So some really good directions coming out of the least cost routing debate, where the Treasurer has issued a letter basically saying Australia needs least cost routing, which is the lowest, an option to have the lowest merchant fees available to each business when somebody pays by a debit transaction. They should have the option to go to the least cost. Yeah. And that requires dual network cards. It requires a bit of mandating into the payment providers and the banks and such things. And the members are on side with this, because what we're hearing from COSBOA organisations and their members is the costs are significant. They eat what are quite narrow margins in some cases. But right now, Mark was able to relay the positive steps forward, but also, fortunately, COSBOA has a policy and a call for action as a result of some of these announcements. So that call for action and the call for government and the regulators to say, okay, by this date, this sort of thing has to be in place, seems to be going down quite well.
Yeah, and it's about that practical application. I mean, everyone's saying what a good news story it is that the Treasurer wrote that letter. Yes, it is definitely positive to have that support. However, it's not a practical implementation. So now the hard work begins. Now it's about really keeping all of the players accountable to what it is that the Treasurer has requested, but also, interestingly, what the ACCC said in their determination. They put some pretty robust caveats around this merger, which does affect least cost routing because it involves FPOS, but they've put some pretty specific requirements around this merged entity that are better than what had originally been suggested. They're stronger. They require an audit process. And I guess the last step for us really, and what we're calling for, is that we have a small business representative on that in that audit process, or part of the board of this new entity of the three companies that are merging, and that's our last call out when it comes to that merger. But we were pleased to see that the number of years that the requirement was for 4 years, that this least cost routing had to be part of the process for the first 4 years. So that was pleasing.
And as Mark reported, our compliments to the ACCC We are thankful for the process they went through. They heard a lot of interesting information along the way. COSBOA and COSBOA members provided a lot, and the ACCC really took on, and what is expressed in that determination is a protection of the small business environment. So that was good to see.
Indeed. So let's talk about quite a difficult topic to unpack, and I think this was recognised by our members when we started talking about it. It's something that we need to turn our mind to, which is around the domestic violence leave. So currently there's a suggestion that small businesses should allow their employees, or all businesses should allow their employees to have 10 days paid domestic violence leave. Now, this is a tricky thing for small business owners, isn't it? Because in a way, we kind of already do this by looking after our workers and by having that really close relationship with them and making sure we hang on to them because we need them to grow our businesses. Is it going to be problematic for small businesses in the future, do you think, Matthew?
You've touched on a really sensitive topic, Alexi. Domestic violence leave in small business. Think of a lot of our small businesses. They are family businesses, or there's multiple family members within the same business. So as soon as you've got a domestic violence issue going on, it can be really sensitive and very hard to handle. So very much where COSBOA's discussions had gone, and what was indicated by the poll that was run during the roundtable, was we don't think small business should be in the middle of this domestic violence policy or violence leave. That if somebody is subject to domestic violence, possibly their small business is not their space for safety. It may not be. So we take it outside of small business and we move it into some existing infrastructure that exists. So through Services Australia, there is the welfare system. Maybe that's the way that any financial support needs to be provided. But there's other mechanisms that an individual can seek support if they're in domestic violence spot.
Yeah. Such a difficult topic, and so many of our members expressed the realisation that this is something we're going to need to look into as it becomes more pertinent, and as we work through the mechanics of government to solve this problem for small businesses. So we will keep talking about this one and keep on checking in with our members as the dial shifts with what's going on in ways that we can't control out there in the land of politics, perhaps. Look, Matthew, I wanted to thank you for joining me again on the podcast. Always great to unpack where we're at. What do the next couple of weeks look like for small business and advocacy with what COSBOA is doing, do you think?
Look, maybe it's a victim of my community through the bookkeeper's space, but inside Treasury discussions, inside state government discussions, we still have financial support for small business. What mechanisms are in place now? Where are the grants working? Is the administration of the grants continuing to work? And what's the roadmap out? So, Alexia, I'm still quite looking at, watching, and I don't think this discussion will stop very quickly. Let's hope the government's roadmap, which is vaccination of the population based, opens up a little of where we go and how we go. Let's hope the restrictions can come off and COSBOA will be in there. Our members will be part of the discussions, helping us guide or input into government for that roadmap. What does it look like in every element of trying to get this economy kicking again?
Yeah, look, it's so complex, isn't it? Because in my mind, we continue to have issues that haven't necessarily been resolved from a few weeks ago, but I feel as though we've literally only got a few weeks up our sleeve that offers small business at least a month to plan before the reopening starts. I mean, how do you do this if you are something that stocks perishable items, plus you've got to re-engage your workforce and work out how many hours you can be open for, how many customers you can let in the door, how to say yes or no to the customers depending on whether you're or not you're essential. And you may get to a point where you completely get up and running again, open the door, and the first person who walks in the door is going to be a COVID, I was going to say victim, but someone who has COVID, and that will absolutely destroy your business from that point forward. So I think that it's still a very high risk maneuver, and I just wanted to assure everybody that we are doing our absolute darndest to make sure that there is a small business lens on every decision that government makes, and that other departments that don't have a lot to do with small business generally don't necessarily get to govern everything about the way we're going to rebuild this economy. And small business will rebuild the economy. That's apparently our job, Matthew. So let's hope to get onto that as quickly as possible.
Spot on. And there is a roadmap and there is a way out. And if we take a breath and think about it, and small business thinks about the right way to build back up again, I think we can be in a good spot.
Indeed.
So, Alexi, not sure where you were going to go, but I just want to call out for those that listen to this podcast over the next month. We've got the COSBOA AGM in late October, with a special recognition as part of that of our outgoing CEO, Peter Strong. So would welcome members to certainly be involved in that recognition.
Indeed, but don't tell Peter, it's a secret. Shh.
We invited him, so I think he knows.
Well, it'll be great to hear from everybody as well, and looking forward to that AGM. Always an excitement, as all we know that AGMs generally are, but I'm sure it'll be excellent. Looking forward to it immensely. And don't forget to join us, everybody. It's very important that we have our members there so that they can speak to the future of COSBOA and what the next 12 months look like. Thanks again for joining me, Matthew. Great to hear from you on our podcast here for COSBOA Roundtable Communiques.
Thanks, Alexi.
See you, everybody. See you all next month.